Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dead Time Stories. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, now let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's story.
The road narrowed as Anna drove deeper into the Vermont woods, the trees growing denser and more entangled, their limbs crossing above her like black veins. Her GPS had lost signal 20 minutes ago, and now she relied on a set of handwritten directions scribbled in a rushed scrawl. The air outside her cracked window was sharp with the scent of pine and damp earth, the kind of smell that reminded her of childhood hikes and forgotten creeks. The house appeared suddenly. One moment, it was nothing but forest and mist. The next, the trees parted and revealed a clearing with a gravel drive and a looming slate-gray Victorian at its heart. The Whitmore house. Anna parked at the edge of the drive and stepped out, boots crunching against gravel that hadn't seen regular use in decades. Her breath curled in front of her. Mid-October in Vermont was colder than she remembered. She took it all in. The weathered trim, the ivy climbing the east side, the gabled roof like the folded wings of a great bird. The porch sagged slightly in the center. The front door was tall, almost too tall, with a brass knocker shaped like a raven's head. She swallowed. "You're doing this," she said aloud, as if the sound of her voice could ground her. "You signed the lease. You're here." In truth, the price was too good to pass up. 3 months, maybe 4, long enough to finish her manuscript and disappear from her old life. The landlord had asked few questions, accepted her deposit without fanfare. When she'd mentioned the house had a reputation, he'd only said, "It's quiet up there. Most people can't stand quiet." Anna didn't mind quiet. Quiet meant no phone calls from her ex, no neighbors pounding on the walls. Quiet meant peace. She climbed the porch stairs slowly, feeling the wood flex beneath her. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the heavy key in her coat pocket. It was brass, worn smooth, and cold even after hours pressed to her leg. The key turned stiffly in the lock. Click. The door creaked, open into darkness, and the house breathed her in. Anna hesitated on the threshold. The interior was still, air heavy with a smell that wasn't quite dust, not quite decay. Something beneath it, like old books sealed in a forgotten trunk. She stepped inside, her boots echoing on the hardwood floors, the sound oddly muted. The door swung shut behind her with a dull thud, as if the house had waited long enough. She fumbled for her flashlight and clicked it on. The beam cut a narrow swath through the darkness, illuminating faded wallpaper, patterned with winding vines and pale flowers, the colors leached by time. The grand hallway stretched forward and split into rooms that branched off like arteries. Parlor to the left, a dining room to the right, and at the far end, a staircase spiraling upward like a spine. She paused at the base of the stairs. Something about the second floor felt wrong. The air was heavier up there, as if gravity clung more tightly to the ceiling. She turned instead into the parlor. The furniture was oddly well kept. A velvet settee, dusty but intact. A lace doily rested on a side table, yellowed with age. On the mantel above the fireplace, a clock that had long since stopped marked 3:15. A portrait hung above it. 3 figures posed in oil. A man with a bristling mustache, a pale woman in a dark dress, and a child with eyes too large for her face. She stared at it. The woman's hand rested protectively on the child's shoulder, but something about the child's expression, it wasn't quite neutral. It seemed almost pleading. A chill ran along her spine. She turned back to the hearth. To her surprise, logs were already stacked there, dry and ready, as if someone had expected her. She crouched, struck a match, and lit the fire. It crackled to life quickly, its warmth spreading in a hesitant glow. She settled on the couch with her sleeping bag, wrapping herself tightly. The flames flickered against the walls, casting shifting shadows that moved just a little too deliberately. She told herself it was nothing. Old houses made noise. Old houses moved. Her phone buzzed. 1 bar, no Wi-Fi. She turned it off. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows in their frames. The trees whispered, and inside, the house listened.
Sleep came slowly. The fire's warmth was soothing, but every creak of the house scraped at Anna's nerves. The walls ticked and settled. The floorboards beneath the parlor sighed now and then, as though the house exhaled in its sleep. Anna shifted beneath her blanket and stared at the ceiling. Faint patterns in the plaster revealed themselves under firelight, strange loops and floral designs that twisted just slightly wrong, almost like symbols pretending to be decoration. Her eyelids grew heavy. That's when she heard it. A whisper. Not wind, not fire. A voice. She sat up sharply. The fire crackled. Silence pressed in. Then, as if reaching through the walls, "Stay." It was soft, so soft she almost doubted it. Her heart pounded as she turned toward the fireplace. Nothing moved. She grabbed her flashlight and swept the room. The shadows clung to corners like they didn't want to leave. Her beam paused at the entryway where the hall stretched out into darkness. Her breath caught. There was someone standing at the end of the hall. A girl. Pale dress, long hair. No face. Not hidden. Absent. Just a blur where the features should have been. Anna's hand trembled. "Hello?" Her voice cracked. The girl didn't move. Anna stepped off the couch, flashlight aimed steady. Each step forward was slow, deliberate. The shadows seemed to stretch longer as she approached. When she reached the hallway, the girl was gone. Nothing but empty space and silence. Anna backed into the parlor again, trying to control her breathing. She sat, pulled the blanket up to her chin, and told herself it had been a dream. The fire had died down now, orange embers glowing in the hearth. She didn't want to sleep, but her body disagreed. As she finally drifted off, the last thing she heard, faint right by her ear, was the voice again. "Don't leave me alone again." She awoke hours later in the dark. The fire was dead, and the shadow on the far wall wasn't hers. The shadow loomed long and narrow, taller than it should have been, cast by nothing in the room. Anna sat upright, every hair on her body prickling. She grabbed the flashlight and swept it across the far wall. Nothing. The beam wavered slightly in her hand. She turned it toward the couch, the window, the fireplace. Everything was as it should be. But the shadow was gone now. No trace. No reason for it to have been there in the first place.
She stood and moved cautiously toward the hall, the floorboards groaning beneath her feet like old bones. The light quivered in her grasp. She tried to steady her breath. "There's no one here. You're tired. You imagined it." Still she called out, "Hello? Is someone here?" No reply, but the quiet wasn't comforting. It was expectant. She turned to the staircase at the end of the hall, drawn by an urge she couldn't name. The banister was cool beneath her fingers, the railing carved with delicate vinework that spiraled upward into the dark. The second floor was colder. The air felt wrong somehow, thicker, heavier with a weight that wasn't physical. Her flashlight illuminated an upstairs landing with 3 doors, one directly across, one to the left, one slightly ajar to the right. She pushed the nearest open with a trembling hand. A bedroom. Old-fashioned, but clean. Lace curtains stirred slightly despite the closed window. The bed was neatly made, covered with a quilt stitched in faded purples and blues. A music box sat on the dresser, its porcelain ballerina poised mid-pirouette. Anna crossed to it and ran her fingers gently over the lid. It opened by itself. A soft lullaby spilled out, tinny and slow, the ballerina spinning in perfect silence. No key had been turned. Anna stared, mouth dry. The tune halted abruptly, mid-note, like something had interrupted it. Then, from behind her, a voice, low, whispering. "She's watching you now." She spun. Nothing there. Only the quilt rustling just slightly, as if someone had pressed a hand into it.
Anna backed out of the room slowly, leaving the music box open, its ballerina frozen mid-spin. The lullaby didn't resume. The quiet felt off, as if the sound had been swallowed rather than stopped. Back in the hallway, her flashlight flickered. Once, twice. She slapped it with her palm. The light steadied, but the sense of being watched did not. The air tasted metallic now, like old coins or blood. She turned toward the last door at the end of the hallway. It was closed, the brass knob tarnished. Something about that door made her stomach tighten. "Nope," she whispered to herself. "Not tonight." She descended the stairs quickly, the boards sighing beneath her feet like something disappointed. When she reached the first floor again, she felt like she'd broken the surface of a lake. Her lungs filled fully for the first time since stepping on to the second floor. Back in the parlor, she threw another log onto the fire and sat in front of it. She didn't unroll her sleeping bag, didn't want to lie down again. Instead, she sat with her knees tucked under her chin, eyes darting toward the hallway every few seconds. The house creaked above her. A slow, deliberate groan of movement from the room she'd just left. She covered her ears. No. This wasn't happening. She was exhausted, delirious. Houses don't whisper. Shadows don't stretch. Music boxes don't play themselves. But then came the knock. 3 of them, from the inside of the wall, directly behind the fireplace. Tap, tap, tap. She stood frozen, barely breathing. Her skin crawled with cold sweat. Anna! It was her name, whispered like a breath through stone. She staggered back from the fireplace, eyes wide. "Who's there?" she shouted, her voice cracked in the stillness. No answer. Then came the taps again. louder from the inside of the wall. Tap, tap, tap. She ran out of the parlor, down the hall, through the front door, slamming it shut behind her. The porch groaned under her feet, the night air biting and sharp. She stood in the moonlight, breath fogging in front of her, heart racing. From the second-story window above, she saw it. A figure. Just the outline of a girl watching her, not moving.
Anna couldn't move. Her legs refused her. The girl stood perfectly still in the upstairs window, not swaying, not blinking, just watching. Even at a distance, Anna could see the long, dark hair, the pale dress, and the absence where a face should be. Like the memory of a face, smudged and forgotten. Then the girl lifted her hand, slow, mechanical. She pointed downward at Anna. A chill gripped her spine, bone deep. Her breath turned to ice in her lungs. The porch railing behind her gave a sudden creak, and Anna jumped, spinning instinctively. But no one was there. When she looked back up at the window, gone. The girl had vanished. Only the soft curtains swayed, though the night air was still. Anna stood in the moonlight for a long while, the trees whispering overhead. Her fingers tingled with cold or fear, or both. She debated getting in her car, driving until she found a town, a motel, anything. But she knew the road was narrow and winding, the forest swallowing signal and sense alike. And despite everything, some strange part of her didn't want to leave. Not yet. She took a slow breath and stepped back inside. The warmth of the fire still lingered faintly, but the parlor had grown dim. She didn't relight the flames. Instead, she sat in the armchair nearest the wall and pulled the quilt tightly around her. Just one night. Just get through one night. She closed her eyes. In the dark, she dreamed of water. Deep, still water. She was sinking slowly, arms drifting upward like seaweed. Something brushed her ankle, thin, bony fingers. She turned, but the depths were endless. Then, beneath her, a pale face emerged through the dark. It had no eyes. It opened its mouth and let out a single word. Stay. Anna jerked awake, gasping. She was still in the chair. The fire had burned out completely. And across the parlor, on the hardwood floor, were wet footprints, leading from the hall and stopping right in front of her.
Anna stared at the footprints. There were 7 of them, small, bare, and glistening faintly in the dim light. They stretched from the hallway and ended just inches from her chair. The last print had smeared slightly, as if whoever or whatever left them had paused, shifting weight. Her body screamed to run, but she sat frozen, breath shallow, the quilt clutched like armor. She forced herself to lean forward, slowly. The prints were real. Water had pooled into the tiny cracks between the floorboards, soaking the grain. She reached down with trembling fingers and touched one. Cold, wet, recent. She recoiled.
A sound above, soft, bare feet pacing, then a slow drag like something being pulled, a chair leg perhaps, or a doll. She rose. The house watched her. The footprints were beginning to fade now, already evaporating into the air as if they had only ever been temporary permission to glimpse the truth. She moved through the hall and toward the kitchen, flashlight beam quivering in her hand. The air was colder here, the floor uneven. She flicked the light across the counters. Old cabinets, their handles tarnished, a rusted stove, a refrigerator that hadn't hummed in decades. And on the table, something unexpected. A journal. Old, bound in leather, stained at the corners. Dust surrounded it in an unbroken ring, as if it had appeared out of nowhere. She picked it up. The front was unmarked, but inside, the first page read, Agnes Whitmore, March 3rd, 1912. Anna's heart beat faster. She sat at the table and began to read. March 3rd. The girl came again last night. She stood at the foot of the bed, watching me. Her dress was soaked through. She did not speak, but I could hear her voice in my head. Don't leave me here. Don't leave me like the others. March 5. Harold says I'm imagining it, but he does not see the prints in the hall. He does not feel the house change when she enters a room. March 8th. I found Evelyn whispering to the fireplace. When I asked who she was speaking to, she said, "The girl in the wall." Anna looked up. The silence in the kitchen was now different. It was listening. Anna flipped carefully to the next entry. The pages crackled beneath her fingertips, dry and brittle. Some had water stains. Others bore faded fingerprints in a grayish hue, as if someone had read them with damp hands. March 10th. Evelyn refuses to sleep in her bed. She says the girl knocks on her window at night and begs to come in. There are scratches on the sill. I showed Harold. He said rats. March 12th. There are no rats. March 14th. Evelyn is changing. She hums a tune we've never taught her. I heard her in the parlor yesterday, whispering to the air. She was using different words, ones I did not recognize. March 16th. The girl in the wall has a name. Anna stopped. She felt the room shift, a subtle change in pressure, like an unseen current pressing against her skin. She whispered aloud, "What's her name?" The house creaked above her, not from settling, but from response. Anna turned in her seat slowly and shined her flashlight into the hallway behind her. The beam caught something at the very end, a flicker, movement, maybe a shape. Then, soft as silk sliding over wood, a sound drifted from upstairs. A girl's voice, singing. The melody was the same as the music box's tune. Anna's stomach dropped. She grabbed the journal and flashlight and backed toward the parlor. Her fingers were trembling, but she refused to run. Something told her the house wanted her to run. She sat by the cold fireplace and read more. March 19th. I asked her what she wanted. She said she doesn't remember, only that she waits, that people always leave, that she hates the quiet. March 21st. Evelyn has stopped speaking. She just stares at the corner of her room and smiles. She hums the girl's tune in her sleep. Anna closed the book, her fingers gripping the leather so tightly it creaked. The singing upstairs had stopped. But now something else. 3 knocks. Tap. Tap, tap, coming from behind the wall again, only this time they weren't alone. A second set joined them, then a third, all knocking, all together, like many hands pressed just behind the plaster, pleading, "Let me out."
The sound of the knocking multiplied, overlapping in chaotic rhythm. Anna pressed her back against the parlor wall, unable to move, her heart slamming against her ribs like it was trying to escape her chest. It wasn't just 3 hands anymore. There were too many to count. Soft, desperate tapping turned urgent, then aggressive. Thump, thump, thump. The walls throbbed, and then silence. Not the natural quiet of a lull, but the sudden, suffocating stillness of something pausing to listen back. Anna sat perfectly still. Her hand was cramping from how tightly she clutched the journal. She needed to leave, just until morning, until daylight. She rose and moved toward the front door, flashlight beam jittering across the floor. Her boots scuffed against the wood. She stopped mid-step. One of the footprints had returned. It was fresh, wet, and facing the door, as though something had stepped out of the wall and turned to watch her leave. She turned the handle. Locked. But she hadn't locked it. She yanked harder. The deadbolt didn't budge. The chain hadn't been slid into place. It simply wouldn't open. Come on, she hissed, twisting the knob with both hands. Behind her, a breath. Soft, raspy. Inhales and exhales, far too close. She spun. Nothing. But the smell of wet soil now filled the entryway. It clung to her skin, earthy and sour. The flashlight flickered again, then died. The batteries were fresh. She stood in darkness, feeling it settle against her skin like cloth soaked in cold water. Her eyes adjusted slowly, just enough to make out the dim outline of the stairs. There, at the top, a figure. Not the girl, a man. Tall, broad shoulders, a long coat that touched the floor. His face obscured in shadow, but she could feel his gaze. He lifted a hand and pointed, not at her, but at the wall behind her. The fireplace wall. Anna turned slowly, throat tight. The bricks behind the fireplace were bleeding. Blood oozed slowly between the bricks, dark, thick, glistening in the flicker of dim firelight as the embers reignited with a soft hiss. The effect was subtle at first, like condensation, but the scent was unmistakable, coppery, sharp, primal. Anna stumbled backward, the journal falling from her hands. It hit the floor with a dull thud, the pages splaying open like wings. No, this can't be real. The blood trickled down the hearth, seeping into the cracks in the stone. It pooled along the grout line and ran across the floor in a slow, deliberate curve. Anna followed its path with wide eyes. It wasn't random. The blood was tracing a word. She knelt slowly, chest rising and falling in sharp bursts, and read what it spelled as it finished forming. Stay. The fire behind her sparked, flaring briefly, casting tall shadows against the walls. The temperature in the room dropped sharply. Anna's breath clouded in the air. The door behind her rattled. Not shaking from outside, it was from within. A low moan hummed through the walls, vibrating the floor beneath her knees. Then, a whisper, closer than before, louder, almost brushing her ear. He buried her in the wall. Anna's eyes flew to the fireplace. Her thoughts scattered like dry leaves. No, not a metaphor, not a ghost story, a body. Someone, something was behind that hearth. She stood abruptly and stepped back. The bricks hounded the fireplace now, the soot on its bricks thickening like coagulated tar. She grabbed the fallen journal and ran her fingers along the page edges. It had opened to a ripped section, half an entry. March 22. Evelyn woke screaming. She said the girl showed her the red place, the bricked-up room. Harold still doesn't believe me, but I heard the knocking again, louder, closer. I think she's not alone. I think the sentence cut off. She turned the page. Blank. The next 5 pages were blank, as if Agnes had tried to continue writing but hadn't lived to finish. She heard it again from the bricks now. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Something was digging its way out.
The scraping came in short bursts, sharp, frantic. Something clawing or digging or desperately trying to escape. Anna backed away from the hearth, pulse screaming in her ears. The fire had died again, but she hadn't seen it fade. It was just gone, like it had been swallowed by the dark. She stumbled through the parlor and down the hallway, hands brushing the walls to guide her. Her flashlight still refused to work. The batteries, new, the circuits, dead. Nothing functioned in this house unless the house let it. From the kitchen came a rhythmic creak, like a chair rocking slowly back and forth. She approached, breath shallow. Her foot knocked into something. She bent down. The journal. It had followed her, but she hadn't brought it. She opened it again. March 23. Harold sealed the fireplace this morning. Said it was just a draft. Said I was imagining the sounds. But the child still speaks to Evelyn. She says she is buried with her doll. She says her name is Clara. March 24. I tried to open the hearth. Harold caught me. Said I was unwell. I told him the child is in pain, that she can't rest. He laughed. March 25. Evelyn says Clara is angry now. Clara, Anna whispered. The name felt heavy in her mouth, like it had been waiting to be spoken. The rocking chair in the kitchen stopped. Silence returned, but it felt even worse than the sounds that had come before. Anna stepped into the kitchen. The chair was empty, still swaying slightly, but something else had appeared on the table. A child's drawing. Stick figures crudely scrawled in faded red crayon. 4 people, 2 large, 2 small. A 5th shape was scribbled into the corner, smaller, almost buried under dark loops of red. Beneath the picture, in shaky block letters, Mama said, "Don't let them forget me." Anna's stomach turned. The walls seemed to throb around her, low and slow, as if breathing. Then from the upstairs hallway, a laugh. A little girl's giggle. Not playful, mocking. Anna turned, heart in her throat, and saw the girl again, standing at the top of the stairs, head tilted at an impossible angle, watching her and smiling. The girl's head leaned to the side, neck twisted like it had forgotten how to hold itself upright. Her hands dangled at her sides, unmoving. Her dress hung damp and heavy, as if she'd just stepped out of water. Her feet were bare. Anna couldn't move. She was frozen at the kitchen threshold, the journal tucked under one arm, the crayon drawing fluttering slightly in the draft that now slithered through the house like breath. The girl blinked, slowly,
Or perhaps her face shifted. Anna couldn't be sure. The features still weren't quite right, like someone had erased a child's face and then tried to redraw it with trembling hands. "Clara?" Anna asked. The girl tilted her head the other way, the motion stiff, doll-like. She took a hesitant step forward. "Is that your name?" The girl's lips opened, not to speak, just opening, slowly, too wide. From somewhere inside her chest came the voice. "You remember." Anna flinched. It wasn't the high voice of a child. It was older, raw, as if dozens of whispers had been layered together into a single syllable. The girl's mouth didn't move, but the sound poured from her like smoke. "You said it." The temperature dropped again. Anna's breath misted. She clutched the journal like it might shield her. "I didn't forget you," she whispered, trembling. "I didn't know." The girl didn't blink. More blood began to leak from the ceiling, not dripping, seeping, slow threads descending from the beams, trailing down the walls like veins. "You have to remember all of us." The girl stepped back and vanished. Anna ran. She bolted from the kitchen and up the stairs before she could think better of it. She had to know what was in that room, the one with the tarnished knob, the one that called to her. She reached the second floor and turned left, heart pounding. The door was open now. Inside, a child's bedroom, untouched by time. A canopy bed, tiny and laced in pale blue, toys strewn across the floor, a cracked dollhouse, and a dresser whose mirror had been shattered, the shards still lying in the corner like fallen teeth. And drawn across the far wall in thick red crayon, over and over, "Remember me."
The words screamed from the wall. "Remember me, remember me, remember me." Each phrase scratched with increasing pressure, the final strokes gouging into the plaster. It wasn't just crayon anymore. Beneath the red, the faint brown shimmer of something else, something sticky, something darker. Anna stepped inside slowly, as though crossing into sacred ground. Her breath came in shivers. She didn't want to look at the floor, but she did. The wood was scored with lines, drag marks, tiny heel prints, stains. At the foot of the bed lay a doll, porcelain, delicate, its left eye missing, its arms cracked and bound by a faded blue ribbon, tied too tightly, like a restraint. Clara's name was stitched into the front of the dress. Anna knelt down. She reached out with trembling fingers and touched the doll. Instantly, her ears filled with the sound of sobbing. Children. Not one, many. The cries echoed from nowhere and everywhere, like they'd been buried under the house for years and were finally clawing their way to the surface. She pressed her hands to her ears, but it didn't help. Then a voice, close, whispered through her skull, not her ears. "She didn't mean to forget us, but she did. They all do." Anna gasped. She dropped the doll. It landed with a hollow clack on the floorboards. The sobbing faded, just a little, but the room still pulsed with grief. She stood up and looked to the shattered mirror in the corner. Her reflection was wrong. It stared back at her, yes, but the Anna in the glass looked exhausted, her eyes bruised with sleep she hadn't yet lost, her mouth twitching into an unfamiliar frown. And behind her reflection, just over her shoulder, stood Clara.
Anna turned. No one there. She turned back to the mirror. Now 3 children stood behind her reflection. Only one had a face. Anna stumbled back, heart thudding. She needed answers. She needed truth. She grabbed the journal again and flipped quickly through the pages, past Agnes's final words, past the blank pages, until she found something new. Pages that hadn't been there before. Not ink, scrawled in childlike writing, pressed deep into the paper. They tried to save us, but he buried us anyway. Beneath it, they're still in the walls. She stared at the page, fingers trembling. The words carved into it pulsed in the dim light like fresh wounds. They're still in the walls. Her breath hitched. Not once were. Still. Alive? No, that was impossible. But present? Yes. She slowly turned, eyeing the room. Its walls too smooth, too flat. The plaster thick, uneven in places. One area near the dresser caught her eye, a bulge beneath the wallpaper, like the wall had been patched hastily, badly. She moved toward it, laying her palm flat against the surface. Cold. Then warmer. Throbbing. And under that, movement, like something brushing gently against the other side. Her mouth went dry. She reached for the heavy brass lamp on the nightstand. Hands shaking, she lifted it over her shoulder and struck the wall hard. The plaster cracked. She hit it again. A piece crumbled away, revealing rotted wood beneath. The stench was immediate. Mold, dust, something rancid. But there was space behind it. A hollow. She pulled at the edges with her hands until the hole was large enough to peer through. She turned the flashlight on again. It flickered, but held. Inside the wall was a crawl space, and within it, bundles. Anna shoved her arm in and pulled one out. It was wrapped in old sheets, stiff and stained. A rotted doll's foot protruded from the edge. She unwrapped it slowly, her heart pounding. Inside, bones. Tiny. Too small to belong to an adult. A locket hung loosely around the brittle ribs. Anna opened it with shaking fingers. Inside, a photograph of Clara. But next to her, another child. A boy, same dark eyes, same tired sadness in the mouth. Anna looked back into the crawl space. 3 more bundles. A quiet gasp escaped her lips. There wasn't just one child. There were 4.
Anna fell back from the crawl space, gagging.
Her lungs filled with the sour, earthy stench of rot and mold, her eyes watering from the rising, oppressive heat now radiating through the room. She crawled to her feet, wiping her mouth with her sleeve, and stared at the bundles, still hidden behind the wall. Shapes in the dark. Shapes that had once been children. Her body screamed to flee, but her legs stayed rooted. There was no forgetting this, no unseeing it. She picked up the locket again. On the back, etched in delicate script, was a single word: Jonas. Jonas and Clara. 2 names. 2 of the 4. She looked down at the journal again, which now lay open on the bed, as if the house had flipped it to the right page. March 27. Harold hasn't come downstairs. Evelyn says he's in the study. She says he talks to the quiet ones. I've seen them now. Children. Pale. Cold. Watching. They follow Evelyn.
They whisper when she sleeps. They say their names. Clara, Jonas, Elsie, Matthew. 4. 4 little ones. 4 empty places in the house. Anna shuddered. She remembered the drawing in the kitchen. The stick figures, one off to the side, alone. The 5th shape, but only 4 names. Who was the 5th? A whisper floated from the hallway. Find me. It was higher pitched this time, younger, barely more than a breath, but close. Too close. Anna turned toward the door. The hallway beyond the bedroom was dark again, but not empty. The shadows were moving, not erratically, not aimlessly. They were gathering, taking shape. She backed up into the room, toward the bed. The music box slammed shut on its own. Behind her, the music box began to play again, but this time the tune was slower, dragged, dissonant. The ballerina spun slowly, her cracked face turning to Anna with each rotation. A whisper escaped her chipped porcelain mouth. There were 5. Anna turned toward the mirror again, dreading what she'd see. 5 children now stood behind her reflection. The 5th one had no face at all. The 5th child stood at the center of the others, smaller, slightly hunched, as though the weight of being unnamed had physically pressed them down. Their face was a blank canvas. No eyes, no mouth, not even the hint of a nose, just smooth skin, pale as bone. Anna stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror. The faceless child raised a hand and pointed directly at her. Not at her reflection, at her. The other 4 children behind it didn't move. They simply watched, their expressions heavy with sorrow. Not accusation, not even anger, just loss. Anna stumbled backward, bumping into the edge of the dresser. The music box fell from the surface and shattered on the floor, the spinning ballerina breaking into pieces. As soon as the music stopped, the house exhaled. The floorboards groaned beneath her feet. A door slammed somewhere below. And then the voice came again, clearer than ever before. The first time it didn't sound like it came from inside her head. A child's voice. Tired. Soft. Real. I don't remember my name. I don't know you. I don't know who you are. The shadows along the bedroom walls began to twitch. They slithered upward, stretching toward the ceiling, forming crooked shapes like limbs bending the wrong way. I didn't forget you. I promise, I didn't. But the child's voice returned, sorrowful, accusing. You don't even know who I am.
Anna backed away from the bed, the weight of the house pressing down on her like a ceiling inching closer by the second. The voice had sounded so close, no longer a distant echo, but a child at her feet, buried beneath the very floorboard she stood on. She whispered to the room, her throat dry. "Who are you?" Silence. Then the floor creaked again, not a random groan, but a slow, crawling movement directly beneath her. "You knew me." The voice was a murmur, but layered with something else this time. Hurt. Anna's vision blurred. She blinked fast, trying to clear it. But instead of clarity, her surroundings began to change. Subtle, sudden. The wallpaper faded, peeled away. The child's bed dissolved into something older,
more basic, a metal frame, a threadbare blanket. She gasped. The room had changed, not physically, but visually, like a memory superimposed over the present. She was seeing it not as it was now, but as it had been. The air tasted of chalk and sweat. And on the wall, faintly now, a new set of markings emerged, carved directly into the wood beneath the peeling paper. She stepped closer and squinted. A tally. 4 lines, crossed by a 5th, another group, and another. Dozens of them. Days? Years? Prison? Her fingers grazed the wall. The room shifted again. She was no longer in the child's bedroom. She was standing in a cramped space, dim, windowless, a crawl space. No, beneath it, the foundation, earthen walls, and a single cot. Chains bolted into the floor. A child's voice whispered behind her. He said I made too much noise. She turned. Nothing. He said no one would remember me if I stayed quiet. She fell to her knees. Tears slipped down her face. Not fear now, grief. I'm sorry. I didn't know. The voice was in her ear now. You did know, once. The room snapped back. The bedroom, dusty, broken, cold. Anna looked at the journal in her hands and saw something she hadn't before, something scrawled faintly along the inside cover. A name. Annabelle. Her full name. Her childhood name. Not Anna. And beneath it, in jagged, childish handwriting, You lived here too. Anna stared at the name in the journal, her breath caught in her throat. Annabelle. No one called her that anymore. She hadn't used the full version of her name since she was a child, not since her grandmother passed away. Everyone else had just called her Anna. It had been easier, cleaner, less haunted. She sat down on the bed, the mattress sighing under her weight as if it too remembered. The words replayed in her head. You lived here too. No, she whispered to herself. No, I didn't. I would remember. But the truth twisted in her stomach like a knife. Would she? Her childhood had gaps, big ones, whole years she barely remembered, a period after her mother's accident when she had lived up north with a family friend. That's what she'd been told. Her mother never spoke of it afterwards, just a vague few months in a house she didn't remember. Except a song surfaced in her mind, a tune. The music box's melody. She began humming it without meaning to, the notes flowing out of her like muscle memory. She stopped mid-phrase, her heart hammering. How could she know that song? She looked at the broken ballerina on the floor, one hand extended. The cracked face smiled through jagged paint. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the journal again and flipped past the entries back to the blank pages. But they weren't blank anymore. New writing had appeared, in a child's handwriting. You left me here. You got out. You don't remember because he made you forget. I remember everything. The final line was scrawled in thicker strokes, pressed so hard the paper was nearly torn. The walls around her creaked. From beneath the floor came a sharp slam, like a fist pounding wood. Anna fell to her knees and pressed her palm to the floor. I'm sorry, she whispered. I was just a child. I didn't know. The voice rose louder now, echoing through the walls and floor and ceiling at once. You promised you wouldn't leave. The light bulb in the ceiling exploded. The door slammed shut behind her, and every window in the house, every one, slammed open at once. The wind screamed through the halls, and in the swirling air, Anna heard all 5 voices, layered together. Remember us!
The wind roared through the house with the fury of 1,000 unsaid names.
Anna shielded her face as shards of glass spiraled across the room, the broken windows vomiting cold air that smelled of damp soil and time. The journal flew from her hands, pages whipping like frantic wings before it slammed into the far wall and dropped to the floor, motionless. The voices continued to echo, layered, desperate, furious. "Remember us!" Anna clutched her ears, but the voices didn't come from outside anymore. They came from within her, reverberating through her bones, her lungs, her ribs. Memories surged forward. The sound of her own childhood laughter in a hallway with yellow wallpaper. A little boy, Jonas, pulling her hand toward the stairs. Clara humming softly as she braided her doll's hair. Elsie and Matthew arguing in the kitchen over who got the red cup. Her own name, Annabelle, spoken in whispers, in giggles, in promises. She had lived here. They weren't strangers. They were her friends, and she had left them. "No," she sobbed. "I didn't know. I was taken away. I didn't have a choice." The house didn't care. The floor beneath her feet began to buckle. Boards warped and groaned as if trying to rise from their nailed-down beds. Cracks split the plastered walls. The wind shrieked louder. And then, a sound beneath it all. A deep, guttural moan, older than the children's voices. Male, cold. Anna's blood ran to ice. She backed away toward the bedroom door, but it was still locked tight. The doorknob rattled violently, as if someone were yanking it from the other side. "Let me out!" she screamed. Silence. Then, softly, directly behind her ear, "He's coming." The air grew dense, pressing in on her from all sides. She turned toward the bed and saw the wall behind it bleeding again. But this time, the blood didn't spell a word. It drew a face. Eyes wide, mouth open, twisted in a silent scream. Anna reached for the doorknob again just as it clicked and swung open on its own. In the hallway, everything had changed. The wallpaper was gone, the walls now stone, damp and moss-stained. The light was gone, replaced by torch sconces that guttered with blue flame. And at the far end of the hallway, something stood waiting. Tall, motionless, with a smile too wide for its face.
The figure at the end of the hall did not move. It simply stood, shoulders square, head tilted slightly downward as though studying her. Its silhouette was impossibly sharp, outlined in cold torchlight. A coat hung from its frame like heavy drapery. Its face was pale, stretched. The eyes were deep hollows, yet glittered like glass marbles. And the smile didn't end. Anna stumbled backward, heart hammering, every nerve in her body screaming to run. The figure lifted its hand, long gloved fingers, and extended one finger toward her, slowly, deliberately, pointing, not at the room, at her. "Harold," Anna whispered, her throat dry. She didn't know why she said the name, but it felt right. The thing tilted its head further at the sound. From somewhere behind it, faint and fragile, came the sound of small feet pattering, running. A child's voice, panicked. "Hide! He's coming!" Another voice, older, hushed in terror. "Don't make a sound, or he'll put you in the walls." Anna backed into the child's room. The temperature dropped again. Her breath turned to frost. The torchlight from the hall flickered once and died. Darkness poured in. A heavy thump echoed down the hall. Then another. Footsteps. Slow. Precise. Heel to toe. The house shifted with every step. Anna dropped to the floor and crawled beneath the bed, holding her breath. The footsteps paused outside the doorway. She covered her mouth with both hands. The cold made her eyes sting. Dust crawled into her nose. She heard it enter the room. The sound of the boots on the wooden floor, measured, patient. It moved around the bed. Once, twice, then it stopped. She could see its boots now, polished, leather, old-fashioned. They faced her. It had found her. The silence that followed was unbearable. No breath, no creak, no whisper. Then the bed springs above her groaned. It was sitting, waiting. And then, gently, almost kindly, Annabelle, you're home.
Anna lay frozen beneath the bed. Her fingers dug so tightly into the floorboards that her knuckles ached. Her body trembled, though not from cold, from recognition. That voice, calm, gentle, that same sing-song lilt that had once soothed her into silence, or sleep, or obedience. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. Above her, the mattress groaned as the figure shifted. Then softly it spoke again. "Do you remember the rules, Annabelle?" Anna clenched her jaw. The voice was velvet over glass, too smooth, too careful. "Don't run, don't cry, and never, ever go near the fireplace." The air turned heavy. Her lungs struggled to draw in the chill. She closed her eyes and whispered silently, "This isn't real. It can't be real." But her muscles told her otherwise. They remembered the weight of this voice, the pressure behind the words, the punishment that followed. The bed springs creaked again as he leaned forward. "You were always my favorite, you know. The quiet one. You listened." Anna's breath hitched. Then a new sound, scraping from under the floorboards, beneath even where she lay, as if someone, something was clawing upward. The man above her paused. She could sense it, the way a predator stiffens when another enters its hunting ground. A distant knock echoed from the walls, then another. 5 knocks. The children. They were waking again. The boots above her shifted. He stood. Tattletales, still whispering. Anna opened her eyes in the dark. The sound of footsteps retreating now, away from the bed, slow and deliberate. Then silence. She waited, counted to 30, to 60, then slowly pulled herself out from under the bed. The room was dim again, the torches gone, the hallway quiet. She crept forward. The hallway was empty, but on the floor where the figure had stood, bloody footprints, larger than the children's, and leading down the stairs. Anna followed them, not by choice, by instinct. She needed to know, she needed to see. The truth wasn't buried anymore. It was walking. The footprints on the staircase were fresh, deep red, heavy, still glistening. Anna descended slowly, her hand trailing the banister. The wood was cold, splintered, alive with vibration she could feel, like a hum just beneath the surface of everything. Each step creaked beneath her weight, but not in protest, almost like a warning, like the house itself was holding its breath. The parlor was dark when she reached it. Shadows clung to the walls, stretching long and tall, the fire in the hearth long dead. But the smell, coppery and wet, hung thick in the air.
The footprints led not to the kitchen, not to the front door, but to the fireplace. Anna stopped. The bricks, once dry, now wept again, slow trails of blood like tears rolling down the mortar lines. She stepped closer. Her reflection in the brass fireguard was warped, rippling as though underwater. She knelt in front of the hearth and laid her hand on the lowest brick. It was warm. A soft voice behind her made her flinch. "You know where it is." Anna turned, but no one stood there. Still, she answered, "Yes." There was a sound, a click. The fireplace shuddered. Then, with a low grinding noise, the central section of the hearth shifted inward. A breath of cold air rushed from behind it, carrying with it the stench of damp stone, mildew, and something ancient. Anna stood. A passage had opened. She stared into it. Steps led downward, carved stone, uneven, swallowed by shadow. A tunnel hidden behind a bricked-over fireplace for over a century. The children hadn't just died in this house. They had been kept here. Anna stepped inside, ducking her head. The walls closed in immediately, stone pressing inward like clenched fists. She walked slowly, her footsteps muffled by the dust and damp. Behind her, she thought she heard others, tiny feet, scurrying, following. She turned her flashlight forward and gasped. There, at the base of the stairs, were 5 small chairs, each one child-sized, each one facing the wall, and in front of them, scratched into the stone, "Sit still, or he'll hear you."
The air in the hidden chamber was dense, thick with dust, rot, and grief. The flashlight flickered against the low, crumbling ceiling as Anna stepped onto the stone floor, her boots disturbing decades of stillness. The 5 small chairs stood in a perfect line, wooden, child-sized, all worn smooth from time and fidgeting hands. One had a cracked leg, another bore deep scratches along the armrest, tiny claw marks, desperate. Each faced a wall that was blackened by soot and age. Anna approached them slowly. Etched into the stone behind each chair was a name, faint, faded, but still legible. Clara, Jonas, Matthew, Elsie. And the last chair? No name. Only deep, repeated carvings. Question mark. Over and over again. Anna crouched in front of it, her heart aching. You were never given one. He made sure of that. Behind her, she heard a soft footstep. She turned sharply. Clara stood at the edge of the stairs, her pale dress glowing faintly in the darkness. Behind her, the others appeared, Jonas, Elsie, Matthew, and the 5th, still faceless, still flickering like an unfinished drawing. They didn't speak. They simply looked at her, waiting. Anna looked back to the wall. She ran her fingers gently across the scratched question marks, the wood beneath her touch splintering slightly. "What was your name?" she asked softly. Then a whisper inside her, gentle, wounded. "You gave it to me." A memory bloomed in her mind. Sunlight, a blanket in the yard, a game of pretend, her own child voice, playful and proud. "You're Princess Liddy. You live in the walls and watch over us when we sleep." The sound of a child's laugh. Anna gasped. She turned back to the 5th child, her voice catching. "Liddy?" The child shimmered, flickered, then formed. A face took shape. A girl with round cheeks, soft curls, and tearful eyes that immediately began to smile. She nodded. "You remembered me." The other children took her hands, the 5 of them now whole, watching.
waiting. Anna stood, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I should have—" Clara shook her head gently. "You were small. He made us all forget." The walls groaned. From deep below them came a terrible moan, not human, not animal. Him, the man in the walls, had heard that they were together now, and now he was coming. The groan echoed through the stone passage like a deep, ancient breath, pulling in, then out, like the house itself was awakening from a long, bitter sleep. Anna stepped back as the children's eyes turned toward the far wall. Something stirred behind it. Stone shifted. A rhythmic thud began, slow, deliberate, like footsteps, but not on the ground, from inside the wall. The fifth chair trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling in fine threads. Clara stepped in front of Anna. "He knows we're together now." Elsie clutched Jonas's arm. Matthew looked toward the stairwell. Liddy reached out, slipping her small fingers into Anna's hand. They were cold, paper-thin, but real. "You have to help us leave." "How?" Anna whispered. "Tell me how." The children looked to one another, then to Liddy, who nodded. "You have to show them where we are. You have to tell them." Anna's mind spun. The bones, the bricked room, the fireplace, the journal, proof. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I can. I can get the police, the historical society, someone. They'll open the walls." Liddy's grip tightened. "Not the walls." The thud came again, louder now, closer. "He's in the foundation." Anna turned slowly toward the opposite side of the chamber. A section of the stone glistened in her flashlight's beam, damp and slick with moisture. Beneath it, the faint outline of a doorway, sealed with thick mortar. The children stepped back as Anna approached it. The thuds became pounding now, shaking the ground. Anna pressed her hand to the sealed door. It pulsed. "He put them here, the others, before us, before you. He called them the Forgotten." Another moan, longer this time, the sound of something vast and hollow, wailing from deep below. The mortar on the doorway began to crack. Splinters formed across the stone like veins of lightning. Anna took a step back. From behind the cracking wall came a voice. His voice. "No one leaves." And then the wall exploded. Stone and ash burst outward as something massive and black surged through the opening. It filled the room like smoke, like shadow given form, long limbs, empty eyes, a grin that opened too wide to be human. The man in the walls had no face anymore, just a mouth, and it was smiling at Anna.
The room exploded into motion. The force of the wall's collapse knocked Anna off her feet, flinging her across the stone floor. Her flashlight skittered out of reach, spinning wildly before going dark. Shadows swallowed everything, but not the cold. That intensified, rushing in like floodwater. The man in the walls stepped forward, no longer bound by flesh. He towered now, stretched and monstrous, his arms far too long, fingers ending in clawed tips that clicked with every movement. His mouth, wide and toothless, split his pale face nearly in half. Anna scrambled backward, her palms raw against the jagged floor. She felt Liddy's small arms around her from behind. The other children gathered, shielding her. The thing leaned down. Its voice scraped through the dark. "You left. You forgot. You have no right to come back." Anna stared up at it, heart pounding, throat raw. "I didn't forget. You made me forget." The grin wavered.
just for a moment. Jonas stepped forward, chin lifted. You told us she ran away, that she never cared, Clara added, voice trembling. But she cried for us. Elsie pointed to her chest. We were all still here, even if she didn't know it. Matthew clenched his fists. You locked us up, told us we were bad. The man shrank slightly, shoulders folding inward. Cracks began to spread across his body like shattered porcelain. You were afraid of us, Anna said, rising slowly, because we saw you, because we remembered what you did. The man let out a roar, deep, echoing, the sound of 100 broken voices. The chamber shook violently. Debris fell from the ceiling. The walls groaned. But Anna stepped forward, one foot after the other. Her voice was steady now. You can't hurt them anymore. The children's hands found hers, small, cold, steady. And one by one, they began to hum. The lullaby. The same song from the music box. Only now it wasn't eerie. It was defiant. The house trembled as the sound grew. The man howled. He lunged, but his body shattered like glass, bursting into black shards that vanished before they hit the ground. Silence followed. Then the chamber let out a long, final sigh, and the stone around them began to collapse. The chamber cracked. The stone floor shifted under Anna's feet as a low, grinding rumble echoed from below, like the very foundation of the house was groaning in grief. Chunks of ceiling fell in bursts, stone and plaster crumbling where the man in the walls had stood just moments before. Clara grabbed Anna's hand. We have to go, now. Liddy pulled at her sleeve, wide eyes turned toward the stairwell. He's gone, but the house is still angry. Anna nodded and turned toward the stairs. The children followed, bare feet padding silently behind her, shadows flickering with each hurried step as the air thickened with dust. Behind them, the chairs splintered. The stone wall where the names had been etched collapsed, as though the house had seen too much truth. Anna climbed, lungs burning, legs weak. When she emerged into the fireplace, she stumbled forward into the parlor, coughing, covered in soot and ash. The fire that had once been cold now roared behind her, unlit but alive. A final gasp of the house's rage. The children moved through the room, their forms flickering, but stronger now, more defined. The windows, once sealed shut by time and something darker, stood open. Wind swept through the parlor. Freedom. But Anna hesitated. The journal, the proof. She ran to the kitchen, where she'd last seen it, and found it lying on the table, untouched by ash or smoke, waiting. As her hand closed around it, she heard them again. The voices. But this time, they weren't whispers. Not fearful, not trapped. They were singing. The lullaby. All 5 of them, in harmony. Anna turned to see the children, no longer flickering, no longer ghostly, standing in the parlor's light, whole, smiling. Even Liddy. Clara spoke, her voice warm. We're not yours to carry anymore. Jonas, you remembered. That's what we needed. Elsie with a proud nod. We got our names back. And now we can go. Liddy stepped forward, her little hand brushing Anna's cheek. You set us free. Anna's eyes filled with tears. Will I see you again?" They didn't answer. They only smiled, and one by one they turned. Their forms began to fade, not violently, not tragically, like morning mist in rising sun, until Anna stood alone, in silence.
Morning light broke through the trees in thin, golden strands as Anna stepped onto the porch, the journal tucked under one arm. Her skin was smudged with ash, her coat torn, her boots caked in soot and dried blood. But she was alive, and the house behind her was silent. No more whispers, no more footsteps in the walls, no more sobbing from under the floor. Just stillness. She turned once, staring up at the second-floor window where she had first seen Clara's faceless figure. Now, the glass reflected only sky. No shapes, no watching eyes. The house looked like what it had always pretended to be, abandoned, sagging, old. She took one last breath of the cold air and stepped off the porch. Her car was waiting at the edge of the gravel driveway, covered in leaves but untouched. She slid into the seat, placed the journal beside her, and started the engine. It growled to life like it had been waiting for her, too. As she drove down the winding path through the woods, something shifted behind her eyes. Not a memory, a presence. A small one, not heavy, not threatening, just there, at the edge of her mind. She looked in the rearview mirror. No one was in the back seat, and yet faintly she heard it, just for a moment, Liddy's voice. "Don't forget again." Anna gripped the wheel. "I won't." The trees opened, the forest thinned, the road stretched forward. Freedom. But she wasn't the same person who had arrived. She wasn't just someone who'd survived a haunting. She was someone who'd remembered, and that came with a different kind of weight. The journal sat heavy beside her, its pages filled with more than ink. The names, the drawings, the tallies, the cries. She had promised to show the world what was done beneath that house. She had proof. But a thought whispered across her skin. Would anyone believe her? Would anyone care? Or would the house whisper again in another 100 years, waiting for the next child to forget? Anna turned onto the main road. Behind her, in the woods, the house watched through its hollow windows and smiled.
2 days later, Anna sat in a quiet office under harsh fluorescent lights. The journal open on the desk between her and Detective Morales. The detective's eyes skimmed the pages slowly, his brow furrowed, fingers tapping gently on the table's edge. The silence dragged on too long. Finally, he looked up. "You said you found this in the fireplace?" Anna nodded. "Behind it, there's a crawl space, below the parlor." Morales leaned back in his chair. "And this Agnes Whitmore, you believe she wrote all this?" "I don't believe, I know," Anna said. "There are remains in the walls. 5 children. He buried them there." "Who is he?" the detective asked, voice even, almost too calm. "This man in the walls?" Anna hesitated. "Harold Whitmore. That's what the journal had named him. The patriarch, respected businessman, former school teacher. His photo had been in the upstairs hallway, dusty, stern, ever watching." "Yes," she said. "He killed them. He sealed them up and told no one." Morales studied her. "You know, this house has been inspected a dozen times over the years,
structural assessments, paranormal investigations. One urban explorer even camped out in it for a week. Nobody found anything. Anna's hands clenched in her lap. They didn't know where to look. Maybe, he said, or maybe the trauma after what you went through as a kid, maybe your memories were trying to tell a story. Her eyes burned. You think I made it up? He thinks, Morales said, folding his hands, we'll need to get permission before any excavation. It's private property. Historical even, you understand? She stood abruptly. You're not going to do anything, are you? I didn't say that, he replied carefully, but if you start claiming the house is haunted, I never said it was haunted. I said it remembers. The detective didn't respond. Anna left the precinct with the journal pressed tightly to her chest, anger and dread clawing beneath her skin. As she walked back to her car, she passed an alley. The breeze shifted, and in the shadows she heard it again, a soft child's whisper.
They're still listening. That night, Anna couldn't sleep.
She lay in a small motel bed, the curtains drawn tight, the room sterile and forgettable. The journal rested on the nightstand, closed, its presence palpable, like a living thing. She stared at the ceiling, thoughts spinning. Morales didn't believe her. No one would, not unless they saw what she saw, heard what she heard. The children deserved to be found, remembered, set free for real. And yet, the more she thought about it, the more uncertain she became. She had seen the bodies, felt their presence, spoken with them. But when she looked at the photographs she'd taken on her phone, the crawl space, the tally marks, the children's chairs, there was nothing. Just darkness, blurred stone, a dead flashlight beam. No proof. She rolled onto her side and reached for the journal. She flipped to the last entry, the one Agnes had never finished, still torn, still incomplete. Then something new. Beneath the ripped edge, in a familiar scrawl, her own handwriting. She hadn't written it, but it was hers. They'll bury it again if you let them. They'll wait another 100 years. You can make them listen. The final line chilled her. But you have to give something back. A soft knock startled her. Room 103. The door. She sat up quickly, heart racing. Another knock. 3 times. She stepped out of bed, approached the door slowly. No one visible through the peephole. She opened it a crack. The hallway was empty, but on the floor was a single envelope. She picked it up. Inside, an old photograph. 5 children on a front lawn, laughing, playing, and in the center, herself. No older than 6, holding a doll with one eye. The back of the photo read, Summer, 1997, Whitmore House. Anna staggered back inside, heart pounding, hands shaking. She hadn't remembered this photo. She hadn't remembered that summer at all. And now someone had left it for her, which meant someone else remembered. Morning came gray and slow. Anna sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the photograph. The children's faces were faded by time, but she could still make out the features. Clara, Jonas, Elsie, Matthew, and herself, Annabelle, holding Liddy's doll. She hadn't seen this picture in decades. She had no memory of the day it was taken, of the laughter captured in their mouths. But there it was, proof. The envelope was unmarked, no note, no sender, and that frightened her more than anything.
Someone had wanted her to have it. She slipped the photo into the journal and packed her things. There was nothing left for her in the motel, and if no one would listen to her, then she'd make them listen. She drove to the Whitmore Historical Society in the nearby town of Belmere. The building was small, white brick, dusty windows, a bell that jingled when she stepped inside. A woman in her 60s looked up from a yellowed ledger. "Help you, dear?" Anna stepped forward, holding the journal out in both hands. "I need to speak to whoever archives local records, especially from the Whitmore estate." The woman's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes flickered. "I'm afraid most of the Whitmore records were lost," she said slowly. "House fire back in 1958 took the library with it." Anna opened the journal to the first entry, Agnes's handwriting, the date, the references to her daughter, to Harold. "I found this inside the house. There are bodies in the walls, children, buried there." The woman's face remained still, but she didn't reach for the phone, didn't ask her to leave. Instead, she closed her ledger. "Come with me." Anna followed her through a hallway lined with sepia-toned photographs, town founders, groundbreakings, schoolhouses. In one photo, Harold Whitmore stood beside a group of boys in uniform. He was smiling. The woman opened a narrow door near the back. Inside, a room filled with boxes, metal shelves, dust, and paper. She gestured to a shelf marked WHEST, closed files. Then, softly, "You're not the first one who's come back from that house, remembering things they shouldn't." Anna's heart pounded. "Who else?" The woman looked down the hall as if listening for footsteps, then whispered, "They tried to shut us up too."
The air in the archive room felt stale, heavy with dust and time. Anna stepped inside, her boots echoing softly against the concrete floor. The woman didn't follow, only lingered in the doorway, hand resting lightly on the knob. She looked at Anna with an unreadable expression. "I shouldn't even be letting you in here," she said. "But if you really saw what you say you saw, it won't stay quiet forever." "What's your name?" Anna asked. The woman hesitated. Then, "Marla." Anna nodded. "Thank you." Marla glanced back down the hallway. "Take what you need, but don't tell anyone I opened the door for you. They'll deny it. They always do." And with that, she pulled the door shut behind her. Anna turned toward the shelves, row after row of boxes, manila folders, yellowed documents. The labels were faint, handwritten. Many had the same last names she'd seen in the journal: Whitmore, Eddings, Lovell. Records of families long gone or made to go quiet. She ran her fingers along the folders until one caught her attention. WHITEST, deceased, unsolved, 1962 to 1999. Inside, faded police reports, missing children notices, newspaper clippings with creases like scars. A dozen small faces stared back at her from black and white photos, each one with bold headings like "Missing, no leads," "Child disappears from yard," "Parents claim child vanished." Then she found it. A grainy, low-resolution image. The front of the Whitmore house, 20 years ago. Tape around the porch, a patrol car in the background. The caption beneath it read, "Family claims house whispers to children. Authorities dismiss case as trauma response." Her eyes scanned the article. A couple,
Their child had disappeared, claimed they heard scratching in the walls. They left the house and never returned. No charges filed, no bodies found. Just like now. Anna's fingers trembled as she placed the clipping beside the journal. This wasn't an isolated haunting. This was a pattern, a wound reopening every generation, and something or someone was ensuring it stayed hidden.
Anna sat cross-legged on the cold archive floor, folders and clippings scattered around her like a broken mosaic of history. Names and dates circled in red ink, margins filled with angry handwriting, some of it recent, other parts faded, almost erased. The deeper she read, the more the pattern became undeniable. Children vanishing from Belmere every few years, families who rented or stayed near the Whitmore estate, all told eerily similar stories, odd dreams, imaginary friends, whispered names, cold spots in the walls. Most left town. Those who stayed stopped talking. The silence wasn't natural. It was maintained. Anna flipped open another thin folder, this one with a single sheet of paper and a photograph clipped to the corner. A girl, maybe 10. The name typed beneath it made her stomach turn. Evelyn Whitmore. Reported missing April 1913. Body never recovered. Anna froze. Evelyn. Agnes's daughter. The girl from the journal, the one who had spoken to Clara, who had started changing, who knew what lived in the walls. But the record listed only a disappearance. No suspicion of Harold, no burial, no cause. Vanished. Anna pulled out the last page in the folder, a letter, typewritten, not signed. The child is gone. You must not continue the search. These matters must remain within the family. The house is no longer to be leased. Seal it. She stared at the paper, her pulse quickening. This was the beginning of the silence. They knew. Whoever they were, the family, the town board, the church, they had buried the truth right along with the children. Behind her, the archive door creaked open. Anna jumped, heart racing. But it was only Marla. She looked grim, nervous. I think you need to leave. Now. Anna stood. You said I wasn't the first. Who else remembered? Who else came here? Marla hesitated. Then, barely a whisper. My sister. Anna stepped forward. What happened to her? Marla's eyes didn't blink. She never came out. Anna stared at Marla. The woman's face had shifted, still calm, but hollowed. A mask of someone who had carried truth for too long without relief. What do you mean she never came out? Anna asked quietly. Marla closed the archive door behind her and locked it with a soft click. She found the same files. Not all of them, just enough. She started asking questions. She went back to the house alone. A long silence. Anna swallowed. Did you report her missing? Marla smiled bitterly. Of course. The sheriff looked for 2 days, said she probably ran off, took pills, left town. And you? I didn't stop looking. Her voice cracked. I knew where she went. I knew what the house does to people. Anna stepped closer. How long ago? 13 years, Marla whispered. Anna felt the floor shift beneath her. Why didn't you tell anyone else? Why keep working here? Marla raised her chin. Because someone had to remember. And if I couldn't get them to believe me,
Maybe I could help the next one. Anna felt something tighten in her chest. Me. Marla nodded. You're the first one to come back with names, with pages, with their faces. Anna pulled the photograph from her coat, the one of the 5 children, including herself. Marla took it in her trembling hands and studied it. My sister used to draw this girl, she pointed at Liddy. Said she watched her sleep through the walls. Anna whispered, She still remembers you. Marla's eyes welled, but she blinked it back. You need to leave town, she said softly. The others, the people who keep it quiet, they're going to find out what you've seen. Anna nodded slowly, but her mind raced. She couldn't leave. Not yet. There were still bones in the walls, still truth waiting to be unearthed, still others like Marla's sister, forgotten. And Anna wasn't going to forget anymore. That night, Anna didn't go back to the motel. She parked her car at the edge of Belmere's forgotten cemetery, where no one would think to look for her. The trees whispered softly in the wind, and the ground beneath them felt somehow undisturbed, like the earth had been denied stories for too long. She spread the contents of the journal across the back seat. Pages of Agnes Whitmore's journal, the old photo of the 5 children, Marla's copy of Evelyn's missing persons report, and her own notes, all forming a web that pointed to one truth. Harold Whitmore had murdered children, and others had known. Someone had sealed the reports. Someone had written the letter ordering silence. Someone had continued to lease the property under different names, even after the house was condemned. A shell game of ownership. The more she studied, the more connections she saw. A judge, a councilman, a former police chief. Their names showed up in the lease records, the town's development council, and the historical trust. People who had grown up in Belmere. People who had once lived near the Whitmore estate. She stared into the trees, her breath frosting in the cool air. It wasn't just silence. It was protection. The house had become something sacred to them, a secret passed down like inheritance. Some part of her still wondered if Harold had promised them something or threatened something worse. The wind picked up. In it, she swore she heard Liddy's voice again. They buried the others deeper. Anna jolted. What others? She whispered, but the wind only rustled. Then she heard another sound. Not the wind. Footsteps, crunching gravel. Someone was approaching the car. She shoved the pages back into the bag and ducked low in the seat, heart racing. A flashlight beam swept through the trees. Male voices, 2 of them. Sure she came this way. If we has that journal, we can't let her leave with it. Anna's blood turned to ice. She slid across the seat and quietly opened the passenger door. She slipped into the trees without a sound. Behind her, one of the voices said, Search everywhere. If we find her, we find the others. The others? Anna moved deeper into the woods, gripping the bag tightly. She wasn't just running now. She was being hunted. The forest swallowed her whole. Anna moved low and fast through the underbrush, careful not to break any twigs or brush against brambles. The voices behind her had grown sharper, more urgent. The flashlight beams flicked across tree trunks like slow-moving predators. She crouched behind a fallen log and clutched the bag to her chest, her breath fogging in the chill. Check the road next, one voice said. What if she's already gone? She's not. That car's still warm. They were close. Too close. Anna slowly reached into the bag and withdrew one of the oldest items, the journal, bound in cracked leather and soaked in history. She ran her thumb along Agnes Whitmore's final entries. Bloodstains smudged the last few pages, but the words remained legible, stubborn like Agnes herself. And then she saw something new, a message she hadn't noticed before. It hadn't been there yesterday. Written in a familiar hand, her own. They won't let you leave unless you bury them all. Her pulse spiked. Another voice in her head. Liddy's? No, this one felt deeper, closer to the bone. Not just a whisper, a reminder. She looked around the forest, heart pounding, and realized this wasn't just a place she'd hidden in. This was where some of the other children had been taken. Those Harold didn't bury in the walls. Those he buried here. Her hands shook as she brushed away the leaves near her boots. Soft earth, recently disturbed. Anna dug with frantic fingers. Beneath just a few inches of soil, her fingernails scraped something. Not wood, not bone, cloth. She pulled. A fragment of fabric, faded pink, torn lace at the edge. A child's dress. And beneath that, small bones, curled like they'd died hiding. She gasped and sat back. They hadn't just been forgotten. They'd been hidden deliberately. From everyone. Even from the house. A twig cracked behind her. Anna spun. One of the men stood just 10 feet away, flashlight scanning the ground. He hadn't seen her yet, but he would. And when he did, he wouldn't let her leave this forest alive.
The man stepped closer. Anna pressed herself against the base of a tree, one arm around the journal, the other gripping the half-exposed scrap of fabric in the dirt. Her heart pounded loud enough she was sure he could hear it, but he hadn't spotted her yet. The flashlight beam swept inches from her shoes. He paused. The beam dipped downward, toward the disturbed patch of soil. Anna held her breath as he crouched and reached down. His fingers brushed the dirt, touched cloth, then froze. A long silence. Then, under his breath, shit. He pulled the flashlight closer, tilted the beam. Anna could see the side of his face now, clean cut, in his 40s, not a thug. Someone local, someone who knew exactly what he'd found. He didn't call out, didn't report it. He stood, looked around once, then began kicking dirt over the small grave with his boot. Anna's stomach turned. He wasn't shocked. He was covering it back up, and he'd done it before. She slowly rose, crouched low, and began to back away, fighting the instinct to run. But then, crunch. A twig under her boot. The man turned. Their eyes met. For 1 second, neither moved. Then his voice, cold, quiet. Stop. Anna ran. She tore through the trees, branches slashing her arms, shadows blurring past. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Behind her, the man shouted, then another voice joined him. They were coming. She clutched the journal tighter and dove into a thicket, crawled through a gap in the roots of a rotted oak, rolled into a depression in the forest floor, and lay flat, heart racing. Footsteps thundered past. The men cursed and split in different directions. She didn't move. She waited until their voices faded, until only the wind remained. And then, another sound. Footsteps, but smaller, softer. She sat up slowly. Liddy stood a few feet away, her bare feet silent on the leaves, her dark eyes watching. You found her, the little girl said. Anna blinked. Who? Liddy looked down at the half-covered patch of earth Anna had just fled from. The one they all forgot. Now you can't leave either.
Liddy's eyes shimmered in the moonlight. Not ghostly, not glowing, just aware. Ancient, far older than any child should be. Anna stared at her, breath fogging in the cold.
You said I can't leave, she whispered. Why?
Liddy didn't move. Because now you know.
Know what?
The girl stepped closer. The leaves didn't crunch beneath her feet. They were never just buried. They were bound. Anna shook her head.
Bound to what?
Liddy pointed behind Anna toward the small grave she'd uncovered. To her. She was the first. Anna followed the gesture. The earth had shifted again. The shallow grave was deeper now, wider, and something was moving inside it. A faint rustle, like breathing. Anna stumbled backward.
I thought the others, Clara, Jonas, Elsie, they were trapped in the house.
They were, because of him. But this one, Liddy added, voice like frost, was different. Anna's stomach twisted.
She wasn't a victim,
she said slowly. Liddy didn't answer. Anna turned back to the grave. The soil cracked, split. A pale, skeletal hand reached out and gripped the earth. Anna froze. A second hand emerged, long fingers, broken nails, and then a face. It rose slowly, pushing through the dirt, empty eyes, wide and dark, mouth stitched shut with rotted thread. Its long, tangled hair was full of roots and worms. The figure opened its mouth, threads snapping one by one with wet pops, but it didn't scream. It breathed. Anna stumbled backward, legs buckling. "What is she?" she whispered. Liddy stepped beside her, still calm. She was the first child Harold ever brought here.
But she never died.
He buried her alive. The figure rose from the grave completely now, head tilting toward Anna. It moved slowly, joints cracking with each step, silent, intent. Liddy whispered, "She's what the house was built on. She's what the town forgot." Anna clutched the journal tightly to her chest. The forest wasn't haunted. It was a prison. And the thing crawling toward her was its warden. The thing that had once been a girl stood before Anna now, no longer climbing, rising. Unnatural, slow, deliberate. Her arms hung at her sides like broken branches. Her jaw hung slack, threads of rotted sinew still clinging to her lips. Her skin was muddled earth and bruised parchment, and her empty eyes, black pits that swallowed the moonlight, locked onto Anna. Anna couldn't move, couldn't speak. She felt every hair on her body rise, her muscles trembling like prey, too aware of the predator's breath. The figure stepped forward. One foot sank softly into the leaves, then the other. Behind her, Liddy whispered, "She doesn't remember who she is. She only remembers pain." Anna managed a breath. "What do I do?" Liddy turned to her slowly. "You remember her." The figure stopped, inches from Anna now. Its head tilted, a thin, rasping sound escaping its mouth, like a question. Anna's throat tightened. Her fingers moved on their own, flipping open the journal, pages fluttering wildly until they landed on a half-blank sheet, the one just after Agnes's final entry. A new name had scrawled itself across the page in thin, scratchy ink. Isadora. The breath stopped. The thing in front of her stiffened. Then its mouth twitched, tried to form something.
Anna said it out loud. Isadora. The wind stilled. The forest around them listened. Isadora's shoulders trembled. Her fingers twitched. Her head dropped low. Anna stepped forward cautiously. I know what he did to you. You were the first, and he buried you where no one would find you. Isadora lifted her head. A tear, muddy, brown, rolled down her cheek. Behind Anna, Liddy whispered. She was the first to scream, and he didn't like that. The forest began to creak. Trees groaned. The roots beneath Anna's feet shifted. Isadora looked up, her lips finally parting, and for the first time, she spoke. Then you'll scream for me. The forest howled. The trees bent inward like closing jaws. Anna turned to run, but roots erupted from the earth and coiled around her ankles. She fell, hitting the ground hard, the journal tumbling from her hands. Isadora stepped over her, and her smile was not human.
The roots twisted tighter around Anna's ankles and calves, rough and cold and alive. They moved with intention, her intention. Isadora, the girl who had been the first buried not out of hatred, but fear. Her presence pulsed with something beyond death, not just rage, punishment. Above her, Isadora knelt, her face was less human now, earth-streaked, half-bone beneath translucent skin. Her lips barely moved, but her voice was in Anna's mind, clear and jagged like broken glass. You weren't supposed to come back. Anna tried to speak, but her throat was tight, her chest constricted with panic. I didn't know. Isadora leaned closer. Her eyes, once empty, now glimmered with faint, drowned sorrow. You did know. You saw me in your dreams for years. Images slammed into Anna's skull, disconnected memories from childhood, the nightmares that had haunted her from the age of 7. Dark places, muffled screams, the pressure of soil, the weight of silence. The voice that had whispered her name in her sleep. It had always been her. Anna blinked tears. You were trying to warn me. Isadora didn't nod, didn't smile. She simply watched. Liddy stepped forward from the trees now, her small voice breaking the stillness. She doesn't want revenge. She wants to be remembered right. Anna gasped. Then tell me how. Show me. The roots paused. Isadora looked down at the journal lying open beside Anna, pages fluttering wildly in the wind. Then she lifted her hand and placed it over Anna's chest. The cold sank deep, deeper than bone, into memory. Write me back, she said. Tell them I screamed. The wind exploded outward like a breath released after a century. The roots withdrew. Isadora stepped backward into the shadows of the trees, her form dissolving, fragmenting, no longer holding herself together. She didn't need to. Anna sat up, breath ragged, hands trembling. Liddy stepped beside her and gently picked up the journal. She opened to a blank page. A pen appeared in Anna's hand. Liddy nodded. Start here. And so Anna began to write.
The ink flowed like water. Anna didn't think. She remembered. Her hand moved on its own, guided by something older than logic. The pen scratched across the brittle page of Agnes's journal, filling the emptiness with what had been denied for over 100 years. Her name was Isadora. She was the first. He took her before the others. He told her to be quiet, and when she screamed, he buried her.
More words poured out, fragments of truth pieced together from whispered dreams and half-remembered lullabies. She described the forest, the grave, the roots that still remembered the weight of her body. She wrote of the house and the room beneath it, the children, the chairs, the silent songs. And finally she wrote of herself. I was one of them. I forgot them all because forgetting was safe, but forgetting let him win. The trees around her creaked softly now, not in warning, but in approval. Liddy sat beside her in the dirt, cross-legged, nodding gently with each word. Behind them, the grave was no longer open. The soil had settled peacefully. Anna wrote for hours, until the last page was full, and when she closed the journal, the leather binding felt warmer, alive, finished. Liddy looked up at her. You gave her back her name. Anna nodded, throat tight. It's not enough. It's more than anyone ever gave her. A silence passed between them, thick with meaning. Then Anna asked, Will the house stop now? Liddy looked toward the darkness between the trees. The ruins of the Whitmore house stood beyond it, just visible through the thinning branches. The house is still hungry, but now it has a voice it doesn't control. Anna understood. She picked up the journal and held it tight. What do I do with it? Liddy reached out and gently touched her chest. Don't bury it. Anna stood. The forest was quiet. The house hadn't vanished. Its shadows hadn't fled. But something had shifted. And for the first time in over a century, the house was listening.
Anna emerged from the trees at dawn, her boots soaked through, hands still stained with earth. The journal was tucked under one arm like a relic, a heart, a grave. She didn't look back toward the forest. She didn't need to. The house behind it was watching, not waiting, not whispering, just witnessing. The air was colder now, clearer, and she felt something leave her shoulders, some invisible weight that had been pressed there since she was a child, a burden she hadn't even known she carried. She walked the gravel road back toward her car, breath fogging before her, every step echoing louder than it should have. Then, a sound behind her. A car. She turned. Black. Tinted windows. Idling 20 feet away. She froze. The driver's side door opened. Detective Morales stepped out. But something about his face had changed. Less skepticism, more calculation. His coat was too clean for someone who'd just stumbled onto a deep conspiracy. His badge glinted, but there was no warmth behind it. Anna didn't move. "Morning," he said calmly. "We've been looking for you." She kept her hand on the journal. "I found what I needed." Morales nodded. "So I heard." His eyes flicked to the tree line. "You went into the woods. Bad place to be alone at night." "I wasn't alone." He smirked, then took a step closer. "That book you're carrying, mind if I see it?" Anna tightened her grip. "It's not yours to read." "You're not the first to think that. Others came out of that house with stories, dreams, names." "What happened to them?" she asked, voice low. Morales didn't answer, but he did say, "That house belongs to the town, Miss Wells. Its history is preserved." "You mean buried?" "Preserved." The word fell from his mouth like a warning. Anna's fingers dug into the leather.
You're going to try to take it. You're going to pretend none of it happened. We don't have to pretend. You don't have proof. I have bones. You have legends. The wind picked up. From the trees, the faintest sound, a child's giggle. Morales didn't react, but Anna heard it, and she knew she wasn't alone anymore. The gravel beneath Anna's boots crunched as she took a step back. Detective Morales' smile thinned. His eyes weren't hostile, not exactly. They were tired, like a man who'd spent his life guarding a dam he knew was starting to crack. Miss Wells, you can leave here. Get in your car, drive away. That's what the others did. And they stayed alive. Anna met his gaze, but they left the children behind. The children were dead. No, they were waiting. He exhaled slowly and took another step closer. You're not going to get your book deal. You're not going to get the front page of the paper. You're going to get a long interview in a padded room and a label that makes your story easy to forget. Anna held up the journal. Read it. He didn't reach for it. Instead, he said, that house has been there longer than any of us. It's part of this town. It's protected. And if you start pulling at threads, you're afraid it'll unravel because you've been lying for generations. Morales' eyes flicked to the trees. You think that house is evil? That it whispers because it's haunted? Anna didn't answer. He leaned in slightly. It whispers because it's hungry. Always has been. The ones who came before me, they knew how to keep it quiet, keep it fed, keep the rest of us safe. Anna took a slow step back. That's why you let the children disappear. You let it take them. It doesn't take anyone who's not already broken, he said flat. It only whispers to the ones no one notices. Anna's heart pounded. Like me? Like you. A pause. You were supposed to forget. And then, from behind him, a soft, breathy whisper. She didn't. Morales froze. His eyes widened. Behind him, just over his shoulder, the air grew colder. The shadow of a small hand formed on the back of his coat, then another, then 5. The children were here. Morales turned slowly, but there was no one to see, only a gust of wind and the chill of something ancient pressing down. He looked back at Anna, and this time his voice trembled. What did you bring back? Anna clutched the journal to her chest. The truth.
The wind tore across the gravel, kicking dust around Anna's boots. And for a moment, it sounded like laughter. Not cruel, not mocking. Free. Morales staggered back a step, his hand moving to his sidearm, not to draw it, but to touch it like a lifeline. Those kids, he whispered. They're real? Anna didn't move. You let them die. You helped bury them. You called it protection. I didn't, he stammered. I didn't start it. No, she said coldly, but you kept it going. The shadows stretched behind him. The sun had risen, but it felt like twilight again. The trees at the edge of the woods swayed in place, not with wind, but presence. Watching. Waiting. Then the air shifted. The journal, still clutched to Anna's chest, grew warm.
She felt it hum against her skin, the ink inside alive. The voices within wanted out. She opened it. The pages turned on their own to the one where she had written Isadora's name. There, now scrawled in overlapping childlike script, were 4 more names: Clara, Jonas, Elsie, Matthew, and below them, a 5th that hadn't been there before: Anna Wells. She stared at it, throat tight. "They're not letting me go, are they?" she whispered. Behind her, Liddy's voice. "You left once, but you never really got away." Morales backed away now, pale. "What the hell is this?" Anna turned to him. "You have one last chance. Confess. Expose it. Help end it." But he shook his head. "They'll never believe us." Anna held the journal out toward him. "Then show them." His eyes darted from her face to the book, to the woods, to the wind. And then, from deep within the trees, a single word spoken in a chorus of children's voices: "Confess." Morales dropped to his knees. The gravel cut into his palms. "I didn't bury them. I just kept the records from resurfacing." Anna stepped closer. "Why?" He looked up at her, eyes hollow. "Because the house whispered to me too." Morales trembled where he knelt, the gravel grinding beneath his knees. His breath came in shallow bursts, sweat tracing clean lines through the dust on his face. Anna stood over him, journal in hand, the air around them charged like a gathering storm. "The house whispered to you?" she said. "What did it say?" He looked up at her, eyes bloodshot. "Not words, just feelings, dreams. I'd wake up thinking I'd buried someone. I'd see a child standing in my hallway, always the same one, no face." Anna's grip on the journal tightened. "Liddy," she whispered. Morales nodded slowly. "It started after I went inside, after they sent me to clear the place out for the city's records. I spent one night there. One. That was 22 years ago." Anna stepped back. It made sense now, the resignation in his voice, the warning under his threats. He wasn't just a protector of the secret, he was trapped in it. "You didn't stop it, but you didn't know how to fight it either." He shook his head. "They told me if I kept quiet, it would go quiet too." He looked at the woods behind her. "But it never does." A breeze pushed through the trees. Anna turned toward the house, visible again beyond the thinning woods. The upper floor sagged further, now roof collapsed in, windows black like eyes refusing to close. And yet, it felt alive. It was listening. The children's voices drifted again through the trees. "We heard you. You knew. You stayed silent." Anna looked back at Morales. "You have one way out." He looked up. "You tell the truth. Publicly. The journal, the names, the graves. You tell them everything." He let out a shaky breath. "And then what?" Anna's eyes burned. "Then maybe they'll finally rest." He nodded, trembled, and whispered, "Okay." Then behind him, a shadow rose from the ground. Tall, familiar, the shape of a man, but not Harold. Something older, something from the foundation. Anna stepped back, heart racing. "Run!" But Morales only turned and whispered,
I'm sorry. The shadow reached for him, and he vanished. No scream, no struggle, just gone. Only the journal remained, still warm, still open.
Anna stood alone on the gravel road. No Morales, no shadow, no proof that anything had just happened, except the journal in her arms, still pulsing like a slow heartbeat. The wind died. The trees no longer whispered. Even the house, sagging in the distance, looked momentarily still, like a beast between breaths. But Anna knew better. This wasn't peace. It was the eye of the storm. She opened the journal. The last page had changed again. New writing, scribbled as if by many hands at once. If you close us again, we'll rot in silence. If you speak, they will come for you. But if you don't, they will come for others. She didn't hesitate. She got in her car and drove. Straight into Belmere, straight into town. It took her 2 hours to gather what she needed. She printed copies of the journal pages, scanned the photos, made backup files, sent them to 3 different cloud accounts, one under her real name, the others anonymous. She sent files to the local paper, the Historical Society, and a national investigative podcast she once interned for. Then she walked into the police station and asked to speak to the acting chief. They sent her to a younger man, Captain Ron Foster. His hair was still wet from shaving. He wore a badge that hadn't been scuffed by time yet. She handed him the file. He read in silence for 5 minutes. Then he said, "What do you want from me?" She met his eyes. "I want the Whitmore house torn down. I want the crawl spaces dug up. I want ground-penetrating radar in the forest. I want to listen." He stared at her. "You expect me to believe this?" Anna didn't blink. "No, I expect you to be afraid of what happens if you don't." She pulled the photo from her coat, the one from 1997. 5 children on the lawn. She slid it across the desk. "That's me. That's them. That house took them all. I came back." Captain Foster looked down. The moment stretched. Then he picked up the phone. "Get me search and rescue. We're going out to the Whitmore property." He hung up and looked at her again. "If there's even one body in those woods, we burn the house down." Anna nodded. "There's more than one." By nightfall, they had floodlights posted on the edge of the Whitmore forest. Search and rescue teams, crime scene investigators, and 2 forensic anthropologists stood in a semicircle around Anna as she traced the path through the woods, right back to the spot where Isadora had risen. The soil was soft again, still undisturbed to the human eye, but the roots remembered. One of the officers called out, "We're getting a reading. 2 feet down, irregular void. No concrete or foundation markers." Another voice, "Possible human remains." Anna watched silently as gloved hands began digging, carefully, respectfully. I half expected the forest to resist, for the trees to scream, for the ground to split open, but it didn't. Instead, the earth yielded like it had waited for this moment, for years. And then they found her. The small body, curled like she had fallen asleep. Bones wrapped in fragments of cloth, lace, ribbon, soil-stained hair still clinging to the base of a skull. The site fell silent. No one spoke. One of the medics dropped to his knees and whispered a prayer. Anna turned away, hand pressed to her mouth. Liddy stood at the tree line, watching. Her outline faint now, fading, but her smile was real. Captain Foster approached Anna quietly. "There's no doubting you now." Anna nodded. "This is just the beginning." More teams arrived. Cadaver dogs swept the rest of the property.
Within 12 hours, they had identified at least 7 more graves. The crawl space beneath the parlor was exposed, the 5 chairs removed. The names matched the journal, the tally marks, the bones. It was all real. And when the backhoe tore into the rotten floorboards of the Whitmore house, the house screamed. The wood splintered with unnatural resistance. Beams snapped like tendons, windows exploded from the inside, and just before the entire second floor collapsed, a single voice echoed across the forest. No more forgetting.
The footage went viral before the sun had fully risen. News helicopters hovered over the collapsed remains of the Whitmore house, cameras zooming in on investigators carrying tiny skeletal remains from the crawlspace. Local journalists swarmed the site, broadcasting Anna's name and face across every screen. She hadn't wanted that, but it was the only way to make people listen. By midday, Belmere was under a magnifying glass. Reporters camped outside City Hall. Protesters gathered with handmade signs reading, "Remember the children. Who knew? Silence is complicity." Mayor Elkins issued a formal statement. "We are horrified by the discoveries at the Whitmore estate. The town will fully cooperate with investigators. Anyone found to have contributed to these cover-ups will be held accountable." But Anna had seen her name on several of the old property documents. She wasn't holding her breath. That night, Anna sat alone on the steps of the library, the journal beside her in a clear evidence bag. It would be sent to the State Archive in Austin soon, cataloged, studied, stored. But for now, it sat warm beside her, not buzzing, not whispering, just still. Liddy hadn't appeared again. Neither had the others. But Anna felt them, not haunting, watching. Captain Foster sat beside her, 2 coffees in hand. He passed her one. "You changed everything, you know," he said. Anna nodded. "They wouldn't let me stay quiet." He sipped. "You still hear them?" "No," she said. "Not since we uncovered the last grave." He looked out toward the courthouse, where lights still burned and officials still argued. "You think it's over?" Anna shook her head slowly. "No, but it started." Foster leaned back, staring at the stars, and far off, past the edge of the trees, where the ruins of the house now lay under caution tape and floodlights, a soft wind stirred. But it didn't sound like a whisper. It sounded like a sigh. Relief. The ruins of the Whitmore house smoldered for 2 more days. After the final remains were cataloged, the foundation had been raised, legally, forcibly, publicly. What had been carefully hidden beneath boards and bricks was now broadcast on national news. The chairs, the children's names carved into stone, the tally marks. Even the broken music box had been retrieved from the soot, its cracked ballerina now sealed in an evidence case labeled Item Number 005, found in parlor. Anna stood at the edge of the wreckage alone, boots planted in fresh mud. Crime scene tape fluttered around her, but no one stopped her anymore. If anything, they watched her from a respectful distance. Some nodded. A few looked away. A drone buzzed overhead. Another report, another photo, another truth. She didn't need it now. She had the journal, and what mattered had already been written. As she turned to leave, something caught her eye, half buried in the soot and broken tile. A shard of mirror. She bent, carefully brushing ash from its surface. Her reflection stared back, eyes tired, hair wild from days without sleep. But she wasn't alone. Behind her, faintly visible in the reflection, stood 5 children, smiling, whole.
Liddy raised a hand and waved. Anna didn't turn. She didn't have to. Instead, she smiled at the glass and whispered, "I remember." And just like that, the image faded. She dropped the shard gently back into the soil and walked away. The journal was placed in the Texas Historical Archive that winter. Alongside it, they mounted a photo of the house's remains, a copy of the original missing persons reports, and the crayon drawing Anna had recovered from the kitchen, now restored, preserved behind glass. At the bottom of the exhibition, a single phrase in brass lettering: "They will not be forgotten again." And beneath that, "Donated by Annabelle Wells."
The ruins of the Whitmore house smoldered for 2 more days. After the final remains were cataloged, the foundation had been raised, legally, forcefully, publicly. What had been carefully hidden beneath boards and bricks was now broadcast on national news. The chairs, the children's names carved into stone, the tally marks. Even the broken music box had been retrieved from the soot, its cracked ballerina now sealed in an evidence case labeled Item Number 005, found in parlor. Anna stood at the edge of the wreckage alone, boots planted in fresh mud. Crime scene tape fluttered around her, but no one stopped her anymore. If anything, they watched her from a respectful distance. Some nodded, some looked away. A drone buzzed overhead, another report, another photo, another truth. She didn't need it now. She had the journal, and what mattered had already been written. As she turned to leave, something caught her eye, half buried in the soot and broken tile, a shard of mirror. She bent, carefully brushing ash from its surface. Her reflection stared back, eyes tired, hair wild from days without sleep. But she wasn't alone. Behind her, faintly visible in the reflection, stood 5 children, smiling, whole. Liddy raised a hand and waved. Anna didn't turn. She didn't have to. Instead, she smiled at the glass and whispered, "I remember." And just like that, the image faded. She dropped the shard gently back into the soil and walked away. The journal was placed in the Texas Historical Archive that winter. Alongside it, they mounted a photo of the house's remains, a copy of the original missing persons reports, and the crayon drawing Anna had recovered from the kitchen, now restored, preserved behind glass. At the bottom of the exhibit, a single phrase in brass lettering: "They will not be forgotten again." And beneath that, "Donated by Annabelle Wells." Then, one night, 7 months later, her phone buzzed at 3:17 a.m., a number she didn't recognize. She let it ring out, but a voicemail came through. She played it, half asleep, expecting a wrong number. Instead, the voice on the recording made her sit upright. It was a child, breathy, soft, familiar. "Annabella, someone built a new house on the same land, and it's hungry again." A click, then silence. Anna stared at the phone in the dark. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. Outside her window, the wind picked up, and she thought, just for a moment, she heard the faintest knock. 3 times. Anna stood once more on the road leading into Belmere. It was late. Fog curled in thin strands along the gravel. Her car idled behind her, its headlights casting pale cones onto the new construction site at the far end of the field, where the Whitmore house had once stood, where no flowers had bloomed since they tore it down. Now, someone had dared to build again.
The house wasn't finished yet, framing still exposed, windows uninstalled, but already it loomed. Familiar, wrong. She stepped forward slowly, boots crunching over loose stone. A hammer lay abandoned in the grass. The company's banner flapped limply from a rusted stake. Her phone vibrated. A text message. No number, just a name. Liddy, and one word. Below. Anna crossed the threshold. No wind, no bird song, just the hollow creak of unfinished wood. She moved through the shell of the house and found it at the center. A fresh foundation, still damp, uncured, already cracking. She knelt and placed her hand on the concrete. It was warm, too warm, and beneath it, movement, scraping, knocking from below. Anna stood, looked around, and said softly, not in fear, but resolve, "I know you now." A breath of wind moved through the structure. Something shifted beneath her boots. Faintly, beneath the concrete, she heard a voice. "We never left." Another voice, Liddy's, followed. "Tell them again. Don't let them forget." Anna took out her phone, pressed record, pointed it at the half-finished walls, and spoke. "My name is Annabelle Wells. This house was built on buried silence. You tried to seal it again, but the truth doesn't stay underground forever." She paused, listened, and the knocking stopped. For now. Anna turned and walked back into the night, her voice recorded, her story still unfolding. The camera light blinked softly. The house stood waiting behind her, and deep beneath the concrete, 5 small voices whispered, "She remembers. She remembers. She remembers."